In the gentle embrace of spring, cherry blossoms danced through the park, carpeting the ground in a soft pink haze. Amid this idyllic scene, a young couple sat shoulder to shoulder on a bench, seemingly lost in a quiet moment of affection, yet an odd tension crackled between them. Kominato Namito, the boy beside her, stared in visible confusion at the girl next to him. She was breathtakingly beautiful, but something felt profoundly off. A plain paper bag covered her face, and her uniform was utterly drenched, as though she had been caught in a sudden downpour of mysterious liquid. Without warning, she turned toward him, her hand gently touching his leg while her finger pointed at his bare feet. Kominato yelped in alarm, only to realize she was simply asking why he wasn't wearing shoes. The panic ebbed into mild curiosity. Before he could answer, his mind drifted back a few hours earlier to the moment their paths first crossed at school. That morning, as a bright-eyed high school freshman, Kominato Namito had entered the building humming a hopeful tune about making 100 friends. Stepping into his new classroom, he felt the familiar sting of loneliness and wondered if he could even manage one or two. Spotting two classmates bonding over their assigned seats, he decided that asking about seating might be the perfect icebreaker. He had a ridiculous thought crept in. What if the person he approached turned out to be his future girlfriend, or worse, a self-proclaimed demon lord who would turn him into her loyal servant for the rest of high school? Exhausted by his own imagination, he buried his face in his hands just as the teacher arrived for homeroom. Relieved, Kominato looked forward to the introductions. He scanned the room, half expecting to spot a hidden demon lord, and was immediately impressed by the smooth, confident voice of Ayakawa, a polite, athletic boy who shared that he had played baseball in middle school and warmly invited anyone interested to befriend him. Hope flickered in Kominato's chest. But when the teacher called the next student, his nerves spiked. He was up soon. Panicking, he decided to copy the previous introduction. A beautiful yet visibly nervous girl stood up next. She stammered, barely forming words, her anxiety so thick that even her name emerged in broken fragments. The teacher gently encouraged her, addressing her as Kamiyama and urging her to relax. Water dripped steadily from her soaked uniform, adding to the mystery. After a long struggle, she managed her first name while clutching the dripping fabric. The teacher suggested she remove the paper bag covering her face, but Kamiyama gripped it tightly, pleading to keep it on to avoid embarrassment. Kominato was utterly bewildered. Why a paper bag instead of sunglasses or a hat? Suddenly, water poured from her clothes as she struggled onward. Kominato jumped up, blurted a hasty self-introduction about his hobbies and favorite subjects, then bowed and sat down just as the teacher moved on. Moments later, he whispered for Kamiyama to sit as well. She did, and a splash from her chair drenched his face. With homeroom ending and the next class approaching, Kominato sighed in relief, only to watch Ayakawa instantly surrounded by new baseball buddies. His own plain introduction had drawn no one. Then Kamiyama turned to him, mumbling something in broken words. He tilted his head to drain water from his ear and politely asked her to repeat herself. Tearfully, she clasped her hands and thanked him for helping her. He considered befriending her. She seemed kind, not intimidating, until he noticed his hand, still red from her surprisingly strong grip and damp from her mysterious water. Imagining her as a powerful mountain girl, he felt a flicker of reluctance. Just then, the graceful classmate Arai cheerfully asked if she could use Kamiyama's first name. Arai introduced herself warmly and invited Kamiyama to join her group. Kamiyama hesitated, admitting she wasn't great at casual talk, but Arai brushed it off, assuring her she would fit right in. Overhearing, Kominato held his head, convinced he could never join such a lively circle. Arai playfully fixed Kamiyama's crooked ribbon, teasing her trembling hands and reminding her they would wear the uniform for 3 years, so they should treat it with respect. Then, in a bizarre turn, Arai jokingly asked if Kamiyama was feeding her uniform or taking it for walks twice a day. Kominato's bewilderment peaked. He briefly wondered if he had entered a world where clothes were alive. When Arai turned to him with a bright smile and asked about his uniform care routine, he hesitantly admitted his uniform doesn't like to eat, only for her to laugh and clarify she meant the thread for frayed edges. She invited both of them to share their uniform walking routes, but Kominato, sensing the growing eccentricity, grabbed his bag to escape. Arai suggested continuing elsewhere, took Kamiyama's hand and stood, slamming her chair back and knocking Kominato to the floor. Kamiyama instantly stood, squeezed water from her clothes, and apologized. Seeing his hand, she suddenly grabbed his collar, called for the nurse, hoisted him over her shoulder, and sprinted out. Mortified, yet silent under the curious stares, Kominato endured the ride until she stopped behind the gym instead of the nurse's office. She admitted she had gotten lost. He assured her his hand was fine and suggested returning to class, but noticed her struggling to breathe through the soaked paper bag. Panicked, he reached to remove it, but she gripped his hands, insisting she would handle it. To his shock, she calmly tore off the drenched bag and expertly crafted a new one from spare paper she carried. Turning to him, she exhales in relief, narrowly avoiding a more serious incident. Still in disbelief, he hesitantly asks if she always carries extra paper bags, and she explains with a smile that when she gets nervous, her bag often gets soaked, making it harder to breathe. Amused by her serious answer, he chuckles, which makes her self-conscious, but he quickly apologizes, appreciating her quirky determination, secretly impressed by her preparedness when she swiftly dons the new bag. Just then, the bell for the next period rings, and they exchange puzzled looks before she darts off in the wrong direction again. This time, he gently steers her back, and they hurry together toward class. As he peeks into the classroom, he quickly pulls back, realizing with a jolt that homeroom has already started. They sit by the classroom door in the corridor, both too nervous to walk in midway. Knowing Kamiyama is likely just as anxious, he realizes that the longer they wait, the harder it'll be. He suggests they go in, reassuring her to stay close and keep calm, which she nervously agrees to. With a plan to act natural and offer a simple excuse to the teacher, they walk in, but as he sees his classmates and the teacher, his nerves betray him. He blurts out a bizarre excuse about a desk trapping their fingers and needing to go to the nurse's office for spray paint, while she stammers nervously beside him. The teacher, amused, tells them to relax, joking that he's like a middle-aged woman struggling with a smartphone. She then mentions she already knows what happened from Arai and instructs them to take their seats. As he settles in, he whispers a grateful thank you to Arai, who brushes it off with a cheerful acknowledgement of his hand feeling better. Finally seated, he slumps in exhaustion. Despite only a few hours passing, it feels like 2 months with everything that's happened. His concern creeps back in as he sees Kamiyama's drenched uniform and hears bizarre sounds emanating from her as she gasps for air. Her paper bag is drenched and her skin looks pale. Feeling urgent concern, he considers asking the teacher for help, but pauses, worried about exposing her more in front of everyone. Then he remembers the large paper bag in his backpack and feels a wave of relief, hoping it might help. Without another thought, he places the large paper bag over her, only to gape in shock. It's much bigger than her previous one, but his surprise turns to admiration as she expertly adjusts it, tweaking it to the perfect size. She thanks him, but he reminds her to face forward where their classmates are already buzzing about the flash from her quick crafting. When the teacher announces the end of class, reminding everyone to have their materials ready for tomorrow, he feels exhausted and plans to head home right away. But as he steps out and notices Asayawa walking with a girl, he smiles wistfully, wishing he too could experience a girl's cheerful company on the way home. Caught up in his thoughts, hand firmly planted over his heart, he jumps in surprise as someone unexpectedly grabs his leg. At first, mistaking the culprit for a mischievous kappa, he soon realizes it's Kamiyama, thanking him profusely for his assistance. Embarrassed, he urges her to stand, insisting thanks aren't necessary, though he can't help noticing her surprising strength. She insists on expressing her gratitude and in halting words vows she'll do anything to repay him. Stunned, he realizes this is the very dream he's had, and earnestly promising to do anything for him. Panicked, he tries to slip away, noticing their classmates' curious glances and whispers about her drenched state and his apparent role in it. To diffuse the awkwardness, he quickly suggests she thank him by treating him to juice next time. To his shock, she immediately slings him over her shoulder, repeating juice as she dashes straight to the cafeteria, despite his pleas to grab his shoes and bag. She is completely focused on her mission to get him juice. In a strange way, it feels like his second dream of going home with a girl is coming true, though not exactly as he'd imagined. At last, she sets him down firmly on a park bench. Looking up at the sky, he tries to make sense of it all as she appears behind him, offering him juice with a determined look. Holding the juice can, he can't help but feel like they look like a couple. As he sits watching her pull part of her bag aside to drink, she suddenly notices his bare feet. Without hesitation, she grabs his leg, asking about it with genuine concern. Realizing the situation, he explains they're still at school. She quickly apologizes, saying her intention was only to thank him, not cause trouble. He smiles and reassures her it's nothing, thanking her for the juice. Nervously, she admits that today terrified her, sharing her unease around unfamiliar people. He's surprised when she effortlessly crushes her juice can, revealing her frustration. She explains that if she weren't so anxious, none of this would have happened. He kindly asks if she thinks she'll feel better once she's settled in at school. She nods, saying she hasn't made any friends yet and had hoped to start high school without feeling so anxious. Understanding how tough it must feel to be friendless, he offers to help her make friends. She beams and promises to support him in return. When she asks what he values in friends, he thinks for a moment and says he likes people he can talk to without feeling nervous. They share a look, realizing they're already speaking that way with each other. Overhearing them, a nearby man approaches, laughing, and declares them friends already, though he brushes it off with a joke about how his past friendships led to trouble. He feels a flicker of hope. Then, turning to her, he asks if she'll be his friend, though it feels a little unusual. She smiles warmly, takes his hand, and happily agrees, both of them grinning, realizing they managed to make a friend on their very first day at school.